Mandy Friedman here, licensed professional clinical counselor, clinically certified domestic violence counselor, clinically certified trauma professional level 2, and the creator of SNAP, Survivors of Narcissistic and Abusive Personalities. We're here to talk about Succession Season 2, Roman Roy, with my brother Andrew. Hi, Andrew.
Hello, Mandy. I am definitely a huge fan of Roman as far as he makes me laugh a lot. And that's one of the reasons I like him as a character. Plus, I kind of understand him. I am not him, but I understand him. And that's what we're going to talk about today is his shenanigans in season 2 of Succession. At the end of season 1, we left Roman on a disaster. He had set up a satellite to be launched into outer space and it exploded. But somehow, at the beginning of season 2, he's the number one boy.
True. Kendall has screwed up even worse than Roman has, I guess, because, blowing up a satellite and almost killing people, not real people. Remember, that's not really that big of a deal. But Kendall is the one who is at the bottom of the ladder, and Shiv, she's, not really the favorite, but somehow Roman is, and it doesn't seem like there's been any consequences for the issue with the satellite.
Here at the beginning of the season, we have something we have to mention, and is that Roman kind of enjoys seeing Kendall in the doghouse here at the beginning of the season. We'll see if he continues to think that.
The kids like to see each other suffer. It's part of their love languages as a family is cruelty and callousness. And Roman is one of them that is very cruel and very callous. But we'll see later on in the season a little softer side of him that comes out. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But yeah, he's happy that his other siblings are in the doghouse, so to speak. And he's kind of reveling in that at the beginning of the season.
Roman is in a relationship with a young lady named Tabitha, who we met last season at Tom's bachelor party. And it's pretty obvious that this is just a way to mess with Tom and Shiv a little bit, but he invites them to dinner.
He does, and it's very awkward, as all of their family get-togethers are. It turns out that they're really just making fun of Tom quite a bit. And Tom is in no mood for this. He's just come from his wedding and finding out that he's not in a monogamous marriage. He sees that he might be hung out to dry for the cruise line crimes, and he's just not real thrilled with Shiv right now. And I believe he just looks right at her and says, "Hey, Shiv, fuck off." But one of the things that gets said in this conversation has to do with Tabitha mentioning someone that she has slept with or had sex with. And Roman says to her something along the lines of, "Is there anyone that you haven't fucked?" And she says, "Yeah, you."
One of the ironies of that scene is that Tom is there. And she's had a sexual relationship, brief though it may be, with Tom. And that's why this scene is kind of like a practical joke of sorts. So one of the darkest practical jokes you could ever play on your sister and her husband. It's kind of sick. And this gives us a great kind of insight into the fact that that's a good way to describe Roman's actions. Roman wants to get in better with his dad. So one of the ways he could do that is to, go through management training. So which Logan suggests that he does. And this is quite an interesting set of scenes, I guess, where we have Roman actually going through the management training program at Royco or Waystar Royco at one of the amusement parks. And this is the same place that Greg was working early in season 1 as well.
And I believe this is a suggestion that Jerry gives him, because Jerry's starting to take him under her wing at this stage of the game. She sees that Roman is on top right now. Again, we're at the beginning of season 2. She's looking around and seeing who the players are. And right now, Roman's a little bit shinier of an object, and she's going to maybe put her eggs in his basket and hitch her wagon to him, potentially, if that's going to take her where she wants to go. So she starts already sort of mentoring him, and she suggests, what would be really great, your dad would really respect this, is if you go through the management training program. And so he agrees to it.
He meets a young man who is also going through the management training program. It's an actor that I've seen in a couple different shows like Severance and a couple other things, and he's tremendous. He looks like a normal dude that you would run into at work, but he's not just any normal guy. There's something special about him.
Yeah, he has his own nefarious ways about him, and he speaks about himself in the third person. He talks about his diabolical plans, and he's very grandiose. So here's another example of someone who's in a management program, because amazingly, all these people wind up managing other people and having power over them, who in his little fiefdom will dominate others and, rule his little kingdom in that same way. It's just on a smaller scale. And I think it's important to note that all of these things we're talking about exist on a spectrum, and there's different versions of it in different settings with different people. Like we've mentioned that, abusive relationships, that can be two people or it can be an entire nation. It happens in systems. So when we look at someone like this kid that he's, been paired up with, and you see how this is not a great person either. The things that he's saying make him sound like he's going to be kind of a tyrant and a jerk, and he really thinks very highly of himself. And he's kind of at the bottom of the barrel compared to most of the people that we're seeing throughout the series. But I think they showed that to us on purpose, that these personalities exist everywhere, and in each of the situations they're still trying to claw their way to the top and step on people. It's important to remember that as we're looking at billionaires and rich people on yachts, these personality traits and characteristics, qualities and tendencies exist in all kinds of different people at all kinds of different levels of power. This could be someone being parasitic, living off of their grandparent who lives in their grandma's basement off of her fixed income in a parasitic way, and doesn't give a shit about that they're using and abusing their grandmother. That person is nowhere near the level of power that someone like Logan Roy might have, but yet they're both parasitic and they're both entitled and they both lack empathy. And so that's what's important to remember, is all of these traits that are patterns and qualities that you can see as being typical, you'll find it in different types of people in different types of places.
We very rarely get to meet anyone on that level and get the kind of character development on the show that this gentleman does get. He gets along with Roman, and they come up with quite an idea.
They do. And of course, it's violent and horrible. It's a virtual reality, shoot 'em up, blow 'em up, violent hand-to-hand combat type of game where it's not just Call of Duty, it's real life. And interestingly enough, in their little competition they're having in the training, it wins. It gets accepted.
Not only does it win, but Roman has to leave, and we'll talk about why here in a few. But while he leaves, this other guy does all the work for him, and Roman still takes credit because it was his idea, and this is exactly how he manages people.
You make an excellent point. They do this a lot. They steal other people's hard work, or they will steal their ideas. It's true that it was Roman's idea. The other guy did all the work, but it wouldn't matter. They're going to take 100% of the credit as if they did all of the work and had the idea.
It was Jerry who gave Roman the idea and encouraged him to go to the management training program. But when Logan finds out about it, he has some advice for Roman on who to tell or not to tell.
Yeah, he says, don't mention you're in the management training course. It sounds like you're in business kindergarten. So this is the opposite of what he's expecting, because Jerry's saying, this is something your father would respect. Well, maybe he respects it when other people do it. Maybe he respects it when non-family members do it. Those executives that go through the training, maybe he does respect it when they do it. But for some reason, Roman doing it is embarrassing to him. It's an example of him continuing to chase his father's affirmation and his attention, and yet again, getting shut down.
We've mentioned Jerry many times, and Jerry and Roman have a special relationship, one might say. He has a pattern that develops in this season where he seeks sexual gratification from his girlfriend, which is totally normal. That's something you should do, right? But he doesn't get it, and he moves on to try to get his sexual gratification in other ways.
We see him with Tabitha a number of times in this season where, they're trying to have a sexual encounter and it doesn't go well. One of the times they're trying to have phone sex and, he is at an event. Jerry's at the same event. He calls Tabitha and they start to have phone sex or try to begin it. And all she does is get some little sexy voice on. And he's like, hold on, wait. Can you just talk? Don't talk with that silly voice. And she's like, I'm getting in the mood, So then they wind up just hanging up. He calls Jerry. And on that phone call is when they really start having their own relationship. He mentions that he's, touching himself. And she's sort of like, are we really doing this? And she starts saying things to him like, you're a dirty little boy and you're such a little piece of shit and, mean things. And he's getting, aroused by this and he really likes it. So he is doing this sort of masochistic mommy BDSM thing with Jerry, and Jerry's participating.
Yeah, it's played for laughs in the show and it's very funny. But it also is showing us how Roman is a deviant. He's got these kind of, he's got issues when it comes to this stuff. For example, he also attempts another sexual experience with his girlfriend Tabitha where he wants her to pretend that she's dead. Roman wants control. This is control for him. There's a lot of that going on, but he doesn't want the other person to enjoy it. He only wants himself to enjoy it. So after he attempts this necrophilia fantasy with Tabitha, Jerry and Roman have a sort of fantasy experience of their own, right?
Roman goes to Jerry's room and he's sort of unhinged and vying for some weird phone sex encounter. He's being kind of weird with her. And, you really start to see him as a sexual predator in this scene. I feel that there's, like you said, there's these patterns that are starting to show up. Jerry gets into the role with him and she starts going along with it. And, he really just needs a BDSM dominatrix service. He should just be paying someone, really, but instead it's manifested in his mommy issues with Jerry. And Jerry is, she's trying to sort of work the situation in her best interest as best that she can. She realizes this is a risky situation that she should not be participating in. But what if she doesn't? And how is Roman going to then start targeting her? Because he could very well do that. So should she go along with it? Should she not go along with it? If she does go along with it, she would have leverage. But also, if you have that kind of leverage over this kind of family, that can be dangerous. And you can just see her sort of just trying to work it all out of how am I going to navigate this situation? This is crazy.
I think that Jerry also, she's a shark. So she is going to use this to her advantage if at all possible. And she ends up actually doing that later on in the series, which is very important. So all this stuff, although it is played for laughs, it tells us quite a bit about Roman.
So Roman is talking to Jerry about how Rhea has infiltrated Logan. And Roman asked Jerry to marry him. And he says it like this. Oh, and one more thing real quick. Should we get married? Not like that. Not like an equivalent of thing, but let's I abduct you and force you to live with me. Well, then you kill me and chop my dick off, something. I mean, I'm kidding. You eat me, I eat you, like they do in Germany. So lots of things to think about.
So funny.
And she's left standing there like, what just happened?
She's thinking, what have I done?
Yeah.
What she's thinking. So Roman's relationship with Jerry continues to be something that is enjoyable to watch and fun to talk about. So Roman is kind of being a smartass, talking to his father. They're having a strategy session about the cruise line debacle, and he makes his father angry to the point where his angry just backhands him and just knocks his tooth out. And Roman is very hurt by this, but he doesn't act like it.
No, he doesn't act like it. He just sort of, tries to brush it off. Kendall feels bad for him. Kendall tries to jump in, and he just, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine, and doesn't want to be the center of attention. Now, later, at a certain point, Logan and Roman are in the car together alone. Logan does what abusers do. He has narcissistic amnesia, he is gaslighting, and also love bombing Roman all at the same time. And here's what he says. He says that he didn't even know that Roman was standing there. I didn't even know you were standing there. And then he says, did I even make contact? He knocked his tooth out. He hit him in the face in anger and knocked his tooth out, and is now saying, did I even make contact? I didn't even realize you were standing there. What does Roman do? Roman does what targets of abuse do, is they will go along with that and say, yeah, no, I know it was just an accident. I know you didn't mean it. And I know you love me, and it's all good. First of all, if you did have a problem with it, you wouldn't be allowed to. So it's not like you have a choice. The only choice you have is to say, okay, it's okay. You certainly aren't going to bring it up. So that narcissistic amnesia, the abuser is the one that uses it, but the target is who goes along with it, because you have to. But the way that Roman goes along with it is like they've done this 100 times before. It's far better to be on good terms with your abusive father, so you just take the beating. Logan even goes so far as to say, that's not something I would do. But it 100% is something that he would do. Not only has he done it, that he's done it multiple times in front of people, in front of witnesses. He did the waiter he smacked, the one that Kendall, was in the car accident with. Logan smacked that kid. He swatted and smacked his own grandson at Thanksgiving. So abusers erase their own deeds. Their evil deeds, they erase them, and they expect that you're going to erase them too.
Roman has learned how to act through this family dynamic. And so he is upset that he got hit in the face by his dad, and he thinks, well, I got to get in dad's good graces again. I'm going to buy him his favorite football team.
He is put to task to do a deal with a Turkish entity. And in conversating with this person that he's doing the deal with, realizes that they own a soccer team. That's the soccer team that his father grew up cheering for. And so he decides that he's going to buy the soccer team for his dad. But when he goes to tell his dad that he did buy this team for him, surprise, I got this for you, he realizes, and Logan fills him in, that actually Roman had purchased the rival team to his favorite team, not the actual team. So yet again, here comes Roman. Do you like me, Dad? Do you love me, Dad? Look what I'm doing for you. I'm on your team. I'm your guy. And Logan having a way of just bursting that bubble, just like the management training that Jerry said would be respected and that would be a good idea. Well, turns out that for some reason, Logan doesn't respect his children that do the management training. And then here he gets it wrong yet again.
Let's say Roman had bought the correct team. There would have been a problem with that too. Some way, somehow, Logan would have been upset about that. That would have been the wrong thing to do, no matter what. So, you think, well, Roman has a part to play in this. He bought the wrong team because he was getting drunk with this guy or whatever. But it doesn't matter what he does. You know what I mean? It's all going to go wrong for him either way. Another fun thing that happens in this whole football team thing is that Roman is tasked with giving a motivational speech to his new team, and it does not go well.
No, I mean, it's the worst motivational speech. And you can tell that he has not seen motivational speeches. Like he wouldn't know the first thing about saying something encouraging or positive, or, it's like he's grasping at straws, and it's pretty embarrassing.
It's really funny though. It's fantastic. All these, tough footballers are standing around, and you're thinking, oh, it's a Ted Lasso speech coming. And he's just like, yeah, do your best. Something like that. It's really funny.
But it's a good example of word salad.
Roman tries to get Logan to open up about his relationship with Marcia. And this is another example of him trying to, get in his good graces with his father. And here he's kind of like in a caretaking role a little bit at times.
You see throughout the series that Roman is concerned about his father's health. He really can't handle the idea of his father having any weaknesses or not being well or being ill. It really bothers him. He gets very concerned about his dad, more so than the other siblings do. He notices that Marcia's missing. Marcia's missing because Rhea has come on the scene, and Marcia's no dummy. So she's, hit the road for now. And Roman has recognized that. And he says to Logan, hey, is everything okay? I see that Marcia's gone. Do you need to talk to anybody? And Logan says, you want me to talk to a shrink? You may want to fuck your mother, but I'm okay in that department. Roman says, well, good. I'm glad we can talk about these things.
So even when Roman is coming to his father in a genuine moment of concern, his father just says, fuck off. And it's interesting too, because Roman's about to have a big realization. Roman goes to Turkey to follow up on this whole deal that he's working on. And him, the banker, Laird, and Carl are kidnapped during the negotiations, which is apparently part of the negotiation tactics. Logan didn't want anyone else to go on this trip. Do you think Logan knew that maybe something like this might happen?
You raise a really good point, and I would not be surprised at all if Logan had an inkling that this was a possibility and chose which child he wanted to put in the cage. And we see how it affects Roman, that he is traumatized by this and triggered by it. And I wonder if it's especially difficult for him because of his past trauma as a kid and being locked in a dog crate and playing the game with his siblings called the dog pound. If you have been abused in a certain way at a certain point in your life, that leaves an imprint. And then later on in life, things will trigger you, or things will be especially difficult. You'll be especially sensitive to certain things because it's reminiscent of something that you've been through in the past. So Roman does his best to keep a stiff upper lip, but he is clearly terrified. And when he does get back from this excursion, you can tell he's been affected.
Every episode based on one of the children, we've come across a certain moment. And the moment is where, we see them struggle with emotional things. They can't even talk, a motivational speech. They can't do anything. But you get them in a tough spot where business is involved, and all of a sudden they can see things clearly. And what happens here is that Laird is the banker. He comes back and he says this deal's great. It's great for everybody. It's going to be good. He stands to make an insane amount of money off this, right? Well, when Logan asks Roman about it, Roman sees it as it is. And he understands that this is not a good deal for Logan. And he points that out.
Despite the fact that everyone in the room is trying to pump this up as something positive and great for everyone, Roman still has the bravery to say, no, that's not how I see it. I'm really sorry, but I think this is BS. I don't think that this is real, and I don't trust it. Well, Laird, the banker, is pissed because now he's, that deal has fallen through. He's not going to make that money. And, he kind of stomps off the yacht and gives a speech on his way out.
Roman has been traumatized by being held captive, which leads to a realization for him where he pines for a real relationship with his family. But it's all joke to them.
You can tell that he needs something from the people around him. He's trying to stay tough, but when he has a moment with his siblings alone, That's when he starts to maybe open up just a tiny little bit for just a second. And he realizes during the kidnapping that he wants to have more genuine relationships. Not sure why that was the lesson that he learned here, but that was the lesson that he came out with. And he does attempt to talk to Kendall and Shiv, and he says, is there a world in which we could actually just like talk about things? Is there a world in which that we could just talk? That seems like something so basic, just so human in what would just be normal relationships. Like, well, what do you mean just talk? But in their family, no, you don't just talk. Everything is strategy. At every moment, you're always on. You're always playing the game. You can't just talk. And so Shiv and Kendall immediately start making fun of him using these cartoon voices. And then Shiv uses that ableist voice that makes fun of people that have developmental disabilities, like the retard voice. And that just shows, again, the callousness and the cruelty that here we have their brother who's trying to reach out, and they know what he's just been through, and they're calling him a retard, basically, through the way that they're talking, and they're making fun of him using childish voices. Like, yes, we're gonna talk. We can just talk. We can just talk. And they just kind of laugh it off. But the idea of them even having feelings in the first place is funny. And it's very clear that being genuine about or expressing your emotions is not acceptable. It is not wanted. We don't want to do it with you. We're not going to. And if you try to, we are going to belittle you and make you feel embarrassed. It's almost like someone pulling their pants down and taking a dump in front of everyone. It's not dignified. We don't do that here. So you just take that somewhere else. It's very common in abusive families that want for things to stay the same. They circle the wagons to protect the toxic nature of the system. And anyone that's about to step out of line in any way, shape, or form gets corrected. And this is an example of that. We're not going to turn into some family that talks about things. Like, we're not doing that. But why is it so, why are they so allergic to it? You know, why are they so set in their own way of not wanting to talk about it? Well, because they don't want to talk about it. It's like if you're in a family of alcoholics and someone gets sober, now all of a sudden, that person's the bad guy and thinks they're better than everybody else because they don't drink now, they got sober. Well, it holds up a big mirror to everyone else. When someone steps out of line and starts doing something a healthier way, it holds a giant mirror up to that whole group of people saying, look, you're a bunch of alcoholics. Or look, you're a bunch of closed off, non-emotional assholes that don't give a shit about anyone but yourself. So that mirror is something they want to avoid. So that's why they don't like seeing it in other people. Narcissistic people don't want to hear about your sob story. They don't want to hear about the real things, the vulnerable, genuine things within you, because it makes them feel uncomfortable. Like it's not dignified. You've just pooped or farted in front of them. Like, ew, who does that? Ew. And that's how they treat it. And you can see that's exactly how they were treating Roman in that moment.
We're often hear the phrase, not a real person. Right. But in the minds of these folks, that's something that not a real person would discuss. You know, that's how one of these not real families work. Right. This is how real family works. Meanwhile, he's asking for realism. That's the word he uses.
Right. And don't forget that in his intimate partner relationships, he wants no realism. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like the closer you're getting to him, the less real you can be, all the way up into and including that you're a dead body. So that's how distanced he is emotionally. Yeah. And the only people that he would feel comfortable even trying it with would be the siblings or someone who's a parental figure. So he would try it with dad. He's going to try it with Jerry. Mom's not having it ever. You know, actual mom is a stone cold bitch. So he knows not to go there for it, but you can still see him sniffing around for something that's missing and then it not going well. All of them do that at some point or another in the series. Even Logan has moments where he is afraid and he is concerned and he's looking to someone in actual desperate need of help. It's not that he's getting emotionally safe and vulnerable and going to talk about it, but they all have their moments when they need a human touch and when they need human understanding, and who it is that they reach to for that is very telling about what's going on with them.
At the beginning of this episode, talking about Roman in Succession Season 2, we talked about how he loved seeing Kendall in trouble with Logan. But at the end of this season, he has empathy for his brother. Is Roman changing?
Roman is having what I like to call a human being moment. Narcissistic people, psychopathic people that wouldn't normally connect on a human level, they still have their human being moments, and they're often shocked by it, actually. I'll see it with a narcissistic person who has just a typical life event happen. Say, for example, a parent passes away. And you would have thought that no one in the history of the world has ever had a parent pass away. And they'll have all these, wisdom epiphanies about things. And, they're having their version of pain, their version of grief, their version of sadness, just like they have their own version of love. A lot of it is skin deep. A lot of it isn't that, deep emotional pain that would, really sink into a person. It's a surfacey type of pain. So Roman having this human being moment of having been held captive, realizing that he probably needs to talk to someone about it. Who could I talk to about it? Maybe my siblings, but I really can't just talk to them because we don't just talk. And he's trying to connect with them. They make fun of it. They laugh it off. But it is interesting how that at the end of the season, he is capable of empathy for Kendall. He sees Kendall's getting hung out to dry, and in his way is going to be cast out, just like he felt cast out and abandoned when he was kidnapped. He sees that something similar is happening to Kendall and that he's being ostracized and abandoned. And so he does seem to have something in there going on that feels sorry for Kendall. But because these things are skin deep, because it's fleeting, your question was, is he changing? And I would have to say no, that he's not changing, that he's just having a human being moment like that they do sometimes.
It's always fun to talk about Roman. He's one of my favorite characters because he's so entertaining, and he's not just skin deep. There's a lot to him, so it's fun to talk about it. But next time we are going to talk about Connor Roy in season 2 and see what he's getting up to in the second season of Succession.
And we're also going to talk about word salad yet again, because Connor is the best at word salad. So if you haven't done your homework on that, figure out what word salad is and come ready to hear lots of it coming from Connor Roy. And thank you for watching or listening. Goodbye.